Do we start now, Ritu?
Yes, Dave, we can start.
Thank you, Pilar. Thank you, Ritu. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Welcome to this, the fifth and final workshop in the CAREC Road Safety Engineering Pedestrian Safety series. My name is David Shelton. I will be moderating today's session. By way of introduction, my role at ADB is the road safety focal for the bank's transport sector group and technical lead for the Asia Pacific Road Safety Observatory. In this final module of the workshop, we cover some key issues for pedestrian safety that bring specific circumstances and risks to people in rural environments, in urban environments, for school children and for people with disability. Every one of these presents new risks and, of course, new challenges, which thankfully generally also have new solutions. So there's a lot to learn as we expand our knowledge from the general protection of pedestrians into more specific circumstances. We'll talk about several of those today with our experts. I invite all participants, please, to use the chat, use the Q&A, raise your questions. If you'd like to have a say yourself, please raise your hand and Marianne will unmute you so that you can make a statement or ask a question. Please make the most use of having our experts here today. In our last module, we heard from three presenters on non-engineering issues relating to pedestrian safety. Dave Cliff from the Global Road Safety Partnership covered compliance management and the need for enforcement to include safety risks both by and for pedestrians. Phil Jordan then spoke to the needs of disabled pedestrians and the many opportunities to create inclusive movement and equitable spaces for mobility in the transport system. And Emma McLennan from East addressed the role of community engagement, which of course is an essential component for the activity of any on the public realm. As a subset of the larger mobility system, pedestrian movement engages all aspects of transport management and its accompanying complexity of issues. So we'll speak to some of these today. A comprehensive approach to planning, implementing and operating pedestrian facilities is needed if we are to sustain an inclusive transport system. Now, before I turn to Phil Jordan to discuss some feedback and commentary on the homework that you have participated in from Module 3, I invite any comments or questions on Module 4. And you can do this by either commenting straight into the Q&A or raising your hand to ask or comment on that content. Okay, taking if we do not have questions or comments, can I encourage you please to continue to raise these as we go through here today. But until then, let's then turn to Phil and some feedback, please, on the Module 3 homework, Phil.
Thank you, David, and good afternoon, everybody. And good morning, and for some, I think still in Fiji out there, good evening to all of you. It's great to have people along from all over the world, and I hope you're enjoying the workshop. And I'll just get this started. Better, I think. Is that okay? Hey, David? That's looking good. Well, thank you for the participants who submitted their homework. You did a really good job. The homework, as some of you will have found out, is one of the case studies that's in the CAREC Pedestrian Safety Manual. We included a number of case studies towards the rear to act as a real practical, hands-on set of examples to encourage you to try something a little bit different that will add to safety on the roads of CAREC. This is one of them. And it's fair to say you've handled it very well. Just to remind you, it was a couple of 100 metres of Simone Avenue in Dushanbe. Underneath this very wide road, there is a subway. And there is a history of crashes, particularly at night time and particularly involving pedestrians. We provided a hand-drawn collision diagram to help you with your investigation. And there is a subway somewhere underneath the road at this point. We provided a factor matrix, and this helps you to look for other patterns in the crashes. And for those of you that have sat in on some of the online crash investigation, you'll realise the importance of engineers like us looking for the patterns in the crashes. And we look for the treatments that will best address the biggest patterns. Here, for instance, we've got a very serious pedestrian problem, and most of it is nighttime. Not totally, but much of it is nighttime. We took you on a site visit, which had to be done via photographs. It's always better to go to the site, daytime, nighttime, look at it, go back again a week or two later as your thoughts and plans develop. It's a wide road, and you have to ask the question, why do people cross this road when there is a subway underneath? Now, there are perhaps reasons for that, but our challenge is to make sure that crashes. In most countries, the pedestrians are legally allowed to cross where they wish, but of course, right of way over the motor traffic. That becomes the challenge. And when they are struck by a vehicle, they are the ones who pay the heavy price, and they are the ones legally at fault crossing mid-block. So there's an old subway under there. You all, I think, recognise that it's a nighttime problem. The subway is not popular. The speeds are quite high after dark. And it was difficult from the photographs to know anything about traffic volumes, traffic speeds, street lighting. But what did you generally recommend in your reports? And we've got a little bit more to add. I'll skip through to the next one here. And that is, I'd like to acknowledge the good work by some of you in particular. Laurent from Tanzania, Rem Ali, I think is in Abu Dhabi. Arshad has done another good job from police in Pakistan. Rehab and Mohammed over in Azerbaijan. So you're wrapped around a big part of the world. And I'll say good work all. The themes that came out of the homework. Some participants wanted to improve the subway and then put up fencing to direct or to force, depending on your use of the word, force everyone to use that subway to get under the road. Others wanted to use some form of time separation, a puffin crossing or a set of pedestrian operated signals to create a gap in the traffic. The first of those two prohibits pedestrians from doing what most of them want to do, and that's get the shortest path, get across the road to the buses, to the park or whatever. The second approach tries to assist the pedestrians by giving them their own little piece of time to get across. My philosophy is, as engineers, we should be doing our best to assist the pedestrians in almost every location. That means putting in signals, putting in pedestrian refuges, etc., to help the pedestrians to get across where they naturally wish to cross. It's only in rare occasions where, for their own well-being, we have to prevent them from crossing. You recommended a number of things. Improving the subway, that's good. Ramps to help the disabled, lighting for personal safety, maybe even some shops down in there, which is quite common through Central Asian subways. Improved police enforcement, of course, particularly at night time. The fencing to force the pedestrians in. But just remember, the logical issue is if you put enough fencing in to direct the pedestrians to the subway, how will the passengers get onto their buses? The bus stops and the bus lanes are very critical at this point. One of you wanted to reposition bus stops. That's probably a positive move, but it's very difficult to know without discussing it with the operators. Several wanted to improve street lighting, and that's vitally important with the nighttime issue on such a big wide road with such potential for high speed. Some wanted new pedestrian operated signals with or without a pedestrian refuge. And of course, the refuge, if it's big enough, will allow the signals to operate in 2 phases. And by having 2 phases, you will not be stopping both directions of travel at the same time. You will have reduced driver delay. Others wanted reduced speed limits, which would have to come with enforcement. One person wanted curb extensions, but sadly, the bus lanes won't allow curb extensions to be constructed. You've seen these sort of graphs before. I'm being very quick here. You've done a good job. Those of you trying to get impact speeds down to 30 are on the right path. According to the SAFE system, after impact speeds exceed 30 kilometres per hour, the risk of death and serious injury climbs rapidly. And for those of you that are still thinking maybe we need to keep speed limits high so that we can get as much traffic through as quickly as we can, just have a look at this particular graph. It shows the maximum optimal traffic flow on an urban road, like the one you're looking at, Simone Avenue, the optimum somewhere around 50 kilometres per hour. So it's not too hard to push that down a little bit, get it down to the 40 or the 30, so your impact speeds are around the 30 kilometres per hour. So I'll say this, you have remembered that pedestrians are our customers. The difficult task we have, because one size fits all, but there are parts of the road network where pedestrians should be assisted, not necessarily, not always prohibited from crossing. Putting fencing up to make a problem go away will rarely be the long-term answer to a serious pedestrian problem. This is not an expressway. It is just a very wide and I'll say a fairly poorly managed arterial road with many pedestrians, many buses, many issues. I'll ask yourself the question, should the motor vehicle dominate here above all else, or do we have to recognise there are other road users? I have come to the conclusion, and this is in the pedestrian safety manual from CAREC, I've suggested 2 stages. Improve underpass subway by putting in ramps, improving the street lighting. Build a long central refuge island, as big as you can make it, and that requires some additional surveying to check the widths and to perhaps reduce the lane widths just a touch. Regular police enforcement of speeding, particularly nighttime. Then, depending on how all of that goes, in year 2, consider putting in time separation, a puffin crossing. I've been selling you on the idea of a puffin crossing for the entire workshop, and I hope sometime in the near future, some of you might be able to bring in the first puffin crossing into your country. And in the CAREC manual, if you look up the case study, you will see a diagram like that, which is my suggestion. I don't have all the answers all of the time, but this is my suggestion based on my particular experience over a career in road safety engineering. And for those who prefer Russian, you can see that I've got some Russian words down there, but the stagger of this crossing is in a right-left direction. So the pedestrians are always walking towards the oncoming vehicles. The crossing serves the bus stops, but people also have an option to use the subway if they so wish. And in fact, the good news, and this is where we finish and to hand over, the good news is that through the generous funding by a British philanthropist and through these and others, Emma last week spoke about these sorts of contributions. The underpass was improved ago. It has a new ramp, which you can see down here for wheelchair users. It's got new lighting. It's become almost a high-tech underpass. And there's the high-tech lighting, etc., in the underpass. But the unfortunate thing is we are still waiting to see if the problem continues. And I live in hope that we will see one day soon a puffin crossing and a pedestrian refuge up above. I'll leave it at that. There's been big steps forward in Dushanbe with pedestrians at this point, and I'll thank all the participants for their contributions to the homework. Back to you, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. And listen, I have some questions for you too as we go. I'm always very curious about the detail aspects of making some of these designs work. And it's possible that you've this way, but I'm going to ask it. So where we put in pedestrian exclusion zones on urban arterials, they're typically fencing to stop pedestrians crossing at certain locations. What is a typical acceptable length for an exclusion zone that won't frustrate or lead to high levels of non-compliance by pedestrians?
When I was a young engineer, we were always taught that the first 20 metres either side of any pedestrian facility was the high risk zone. And therefore those 20 metres are sometimes ones, if you fire up big volumes of pedestrians and they're jaywalking, to use that expression, that might be where you would want to put pedestrian fencing. I've never been a fan of too much pedestrian because I think pedestrians are reasonable and they are always guided by their feet, and they will always want to take the short. With the best of intentions, pedestrians will ignore that and do something else. To follow the rules, their own safety, hopefully the school education system and all of that as well. But I suggested in CAREC there is still a need to give more pedestrian facilities which help and assist the pedestrian rather than prohibit, prevent into the pedestrian. And I think you might correct me if I'm wrong, and Emma might correct me, but I believe Transport London in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years has been moving away from pedestrian fencing. I look forward to hearing more on that. But
excellent.
We'll leave it there.
Thank you. And
thanks,
we are in a moment going to hear from Emily Carr on school road safety, and then we'll also hear from Tolga Emma Mugler, urban pedestrian safety, before Phil covered rural safety as well. So we're covering quite a few topics. I think I referred to doing a session. But Phil, I do have another question for you. I'm fascinated particularly by urban arterial roads, which so often we expect them to carry heavy traffic, manage pedestrians, say, to do everything. And this is one of the real challenges we have, not only for pedestrians, but particularly for all sorts of intersection safety hazards. And so one of the solutions that I know exists in this space is to operate the road such that it provides priority to different modes at different times of day. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on the effectiveness of that approach for pedestrians.
What you're saying is something that I've been keenly promoting here in Victoria. We're fortunate to have a very advanced traffic management system, as you well know, David, where the signals are linked and where they are coordinated on an area-wide basis, thousands of signals. So we have minimum delays, minimum disruption, etc. I've often thought that during the time between the peak periods, morning and afternoon, which going through our strip shopping centres, which is where many of the arterials pass through, there should be greater emphasis given to the pedestrians having priority with their signals coming up much more rapidly than what they do. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. There is still a long way to go with that. Maybe Tolga has got more complete answer to that. But no disagreement from me. Actually,
sure. Tolga,
achieving
your
it
thoughts?
is the fine balance.
I think it's a tricky question, but my thought is here. Actually, the complete street approach can be, the good solution. So how? I don't know our participants are aware that the complete street approach for the urban arteries road, as David, you mentioned that along the urban artery road, we have different type of road user, including, the public transit passenger, the pedestrian, the cyclist, for sure, the motorized vehicles, so on. I mean, the complete street approach, we can, use the central lane to educate, the mass transit. It could be, the LRT or the BRT, as well as, we can provide the cycling track or, the bike lane, as well as, the smooth and sufficient, the width for the, the sidewalk, and 2 or 3 lane. I mean, for sure, according, the traffic, the volume, we can, the make a room for the vehicle traffic. So the complete street approach also is good, the solution for, the urban environment. So the main issues is here. I mean, all problems relate to, the urban mobility are originated from, the urban development, the rapid, the urbanization in developing and emerging countries. So I think it's helped to, the change the, the environment of, our city more accessible, more safe, more sustainable. Well, I can say that, and at least we can also increase the volume of the the people that we can carry along this the urban artery with the the mass transit, the cycling, the smooth and the safe the sidewalk, so on. I mean, we can encourage our the participant in here from different the agency in CAREC city. The complete approach can be a good solution.
Thank you. Great. I'll look forward to hearing more on that when you return to your topic in a little while, Tolga. But for now, thank you to you, Phil. Let's move on. We're now going to dip into the topic of school road safety and hear from Emily Carr at East Alliance. Pedestrian safety has been a strong focus of East's work for quite a long time, and we're very privileged to benefit from their expertise. Emily is the Deputy Director for Programs and Sustainability at the Eastern Alliance for Safe and Sustainable Transport. She leads East's work on safe school zones, children and young people's road safety education, and community and stakeholder engagement. Emily's also the author of East's Toolkit for assessing and reporting on road safety in school zones. And she developed East's Road Safety Education Pack, which is now available in 15 languages. Welcome to you, Emily.
Good morning, lovely to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to see an East example being used for the homeworks. That was really great. Thank you, Phil. Very pleased to see that. And lovely to be here and talk to you about safe school zones today. I think a lot of what I'm going to say will be covering things which have already been touched on, but it's worth reiterating all of it. And one of the things we always say at East is, if you create roads which are safe for children and safe for the most vulnerable, they will be safe for everybody. So the issue of safe routes to schools really covers all the key bases in terms of pedestrian safety. I'm just trying to get my screen onto full screen for you. So I will, in this session, I will talk briefly about why we specifically need to focus on schools, questions to consider when thinking about road safety around schools, and look at some of the key issues and approaches, and then just wrap up with a summary of some of the key points. So just to start with, these are probably very familiar statistics, but I just think it's always worth reiterating just how crucial children's road safety is. Road death is the biggest killer of school-aged children worldwide. You know, it is absolutely crucial that we get this right. And every day, 500 children leave home to go to school and don't come back. It's absolutely shocking. And it's vital that we think about how we make those journeys safe. We can see when we look at the data around road crashes that the risk to children is on the way to school. There is a peak in children's incidents involving children in that sort of key hour between 8 and 9, and then in those post-school hours, a couple of hours after school. So we know that is when they are most exposed to danger, and we know it's the journey at which they're at most risk. So it's the point at which we need to focus. So just a quick slide on why children are different. There are reasons why children are at more risk on the road than adults. They are physically smaller, so it's just harder for drivers to see them, and they can't see the roads as well. They can't see around parked cars. They have less visibility across the street, so they're just at more risk because they cannot be seen. They're also more likely to be hurt by an impact with a vehicle. They are, again, just because they are physically smaller, we know from the laws of physics they will be more hurt if they are hit. So they're much more vulnerable if something goes wrong. They also lack maturity to judge speed and different distance, and they're still developing their eyesight and hearing. They just find those judgments about how to navigate traffic much more difficult. And they also lack maturity, and they tend to be distracted and can act on impulse. So, you know, will run out after a ball, will not look quickly, will not think through the consequences. So they are much more vulnerable, we know that. And just thinking about the stages, excuse me, stages of childhood, we know that children under 10 lack the cognitive maturity to be safe around traffic. They don't have the skills to judge distance. They can't understand, they can't process speed in the same way as older children and adults. So they just do not have the maturity to be on roads unaccompanied, and should really always be accompanied by adults. I know that's not necessarily always the case in terms of school runs and children travelling to school across the CAREC region, but ideally children under 10 should always be accompanied either by an older sibling or by an adult. We know, looking at the data, that the increased risk increases for children as they become independent travellers. So looking at certainly UK data, you can see there is a significant spike at the age of 11 and 12 when children tend to start travelling to school independently, and we can see similar patterns in other countries. We also know that although teenagers have the physical maturity, they're better at judging distance and speed, they lack the maturity to make safe decisions. They fail to understand the consequence of risk. They sort of know what they should be doing, but they fail to understand why it's so important. They're also, we know, very prone to peer pressure. So they will mess about when they're with their mates. They will make rash decisions. They will run for it when they shouldn't. just because that's in their nature. We know that both as pedestrians and as young drivers. So we know there is a risk-taking mentality amongst teenagers, which we need to factor in when thinking about road safety around schools. So this is just a quick slide thinking about the context of safety around schools. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights recognises that a right to education, and that is almost universally accepted around the world, that the right to education for children is a good thing. But unless we make sure they can get to school safely and can make that journey safely, get there and get back, that right to education really is meaningless. We have to make sure that if we're going to serve the next generation, there are safe routes to school. So, do you want to say a little bit about thinking about routes to school and thinking about school zones and where the focus should be and what we should be looking at in terms of children's road safety? So we know the main journey undertaken by children is to school. It's not the only journey. They are out and about on roads. They are going to parks. They're going to friends. They're going to cinemas. But the time at which most children are out and about, particularly independently, is on the way to school. If you look at the crash data, you can see that not all incidents, in fact the majority of incidents, are not immediately outside schools. So we need to be thinking about that whole route to school. We need to think about how we keep a child safe from the moment they leave home to the moment they arrive at school. And there needs to be a sort of area-wide approach, particularly in urban areas, of keeping speed slow, of the key issues of keeping children safe. But school zones are also important particularly important because we know all the children will end up there eventually. That will be a focal point. There will be large numbers of child pedestrians in that area. But we also know that they're, from our work with East, they're really good for pilots. They're really good for pushing forward on road safety decisions and working with decision makers. We did a survey in 9 of our countries, which are all in the CAREC region, which showed that the community had an 80% support for 30 kilometres an hour speed limits around school zones, while there was less than 50% support for more wider urban areas. So we know you can push further and you can achieve more in school zones, and policymakers are more willing to listen to you. So it's really useful in terms of pushing those boundaries and trying new and pilot projects. But it's also important because there are large numbers of children in those areas. But never forget that every child should be safe from the moment they leave home to the moment they reach school. So we're not just looking at the area immediately outside schools. When thinking about child pedestrians, you need the whole area taken into consideration. So just a little bit on stakeholder engagement. I know this was dealt with in the last session, but it is really important to speak to schools, to understand what the issues are, to speak to parents, to speak to the teachers. They will know what the issues are in their school zone. They will know where it's dangerous. They will know the danger points. They will know the issues, whether it's speed, whether it's parking, what it is. And it's really important to go and talk to them and really understand what's going on. They'll also know the routes to school. You can't really address any issue around school road safety unless you know how the children are getting there. Are they coming on the bus? Are they coming in private cars? Are they walking? Where are the danger points? How are the children and where are they exposed? So it's really important to engage with schools and have those discussions. It's also really important, this is Phil was saying this about the case study he did for homework. There is nothing more valuable than just going and observing the site. You should be there, you should be looking at the start and the end of the school day and looking at where the children are coming from, where they're approaching, where they're crossing, what are the issues, what is the visibility like, what are the key issues. So there's nothing more important than both speaking to the school and observing what's going on. Until you've done that, it's really very hard to make any progress. So just to say, the key issue we know, particularly about child road safety, it's speed. And again, this is very similar to the stuff Phil has just been talking about. He gave this example when talking about the homework, but we know that at 30 kilometres an hour, 90% of people are likely to survive a collision with a vehicle, while at 50 kilometres an hour, it's only 10%. And we know that the WHO recommends 30 kilometres an hour in areas where pedestrians and cyclists mix. And the UN Road Safety Collaboration calls for safe school zones with speeds of no more than 30 kilometres an hour. Now, it'd be naive to suggest that every school in the CAREC region is going to get a 30 kilometre an hour speed limit, but that should always be the aim. The best option would be for a slow speed around a school. Now, where schools are on large arterial roads, that's not going to happen. We need to think about other things, but I would suggest, as engineers, when you're approaching safety around a school, your default starting point should be, why can this not be 30 kilometres an hour? That's what we should always be aiming for. I mean, East, this is, as Dave Shelton said in my introduction, yeah, East, we're working hard on school zone safety, and we're advocating for legislative change in Armenia and Moldova and in 3 cities in Georgia to try and make that the default speed limit for all schools on local roads. And we're making good progress with that. So we're really hoping that we're moving in that direction, and that will be coming. So just to say, in terms of other issues, we know speed limits aren't enough. We did some work in East around a school in Dushanbe in Tajikistan, where the speed limit wasn't 30 kilometres an hour, but it was 40 kilometres an hour. We went and we actually measured the speeds and looked at what drivers were doing at the time of school run. The average vehicle was travelling at 72 kilometres an hour, and the fastest vehicle was travelling at 120. So we know just having speed limits is not enough. I've put on this slide that enforcement is inconsistent. In fact, in some regions of the CAREC, in some countries of the CAREC region, we know that enforcement is entirely consistent. You know, it is an absolute open secret that the road police will turn up in the first week of the school year and do speed enforcement for a week, and then they will go away and everyone can drive how they like for the rest of the school year, you know, and that is just hopeless. So unless there are cameras or, you know, other issues, speed limits are not enough. So we need to think about infrastructure changes too, to try and bring down the speeds in and around schools. So I'm sure you've covered this a lot, and I know there's a lot of stuff in the manual about this, but thinking about all the things that Phil has been talking about in other sessions. So curb extensions to reduce the width where children are crossing, pedestrian refuges, which I saw came up in the homework, chicanes, which I don't think is so familiar in the CAREC region, but perhaps as pilots bringing those in, and also looking at raised crossings or speed humps or speed cushions to keep that, you know, as a physical way of enforcing those lower speed limits. And this is just a sort of nice picture of an East project down here, which is a school in Moldova, where we've taken a school and reduced the speed limit down to, you can see the school in the background there, down to 30 kilometres an hour, and put in one of the very first raised crossings in Moldova. And that is having a big impact there. So I've just put this slide in. I won't go through this in great detail, but I just wanted to remind people that there is a very good table within your manual which looks at a lot of these things. It takes it specifically looking at children, looking at the characteristics of children, some of the consequences of those characteristics and those behaviours, and then thinking about options for how you can address those. And that is a really nice table, and that is there in the manual for you to refer to. So I wanted to talk specifically about crossings, which is obviously one of the key things. We know children are exposed to danger across the school run, but the point at which they're most exposed is when they're actually crossing the road and likely to come in conflict with the traffic. And I wanted to pick up on what Phil's been saying about having crossings in convenient places. And Phil was talking about how fencing doesn't work, how you want to go with the pedestrians' instinct to cross in convenient places. Now that is true for adults. I mean, it is true on, indefinitely with teenagers. You may think teenagers are going to be kept in by fencing. You may think they're going to cross where you want them to, but they are not. It is absolutely vital that you work with them. They are not going to be persuaded. As a parent of 3 teenagers, I can tell you they're not going to do what you want. So therefore, you need to get back to those observations and looking where they're crossing and thinking about how you can make that safe. We're currently working on a project in Azerbaijan where we're looking at whether you can have a mid-block crossing, which they're quite resistant to, but it's perfectly obvious that is where the kids are going to cross the road. So how do we address that, and how do we make that work within current regulations? It's quite a nice photograph here where you can just see, despite the fencing and despite the pavement, despite the road, the pedestrians have gone straight across the grass every time. So, we need to work with that. Working against that is not going to work, and it's not going to be safe. You need to think about where the kids are going to cross, and they are going to do it. And just think about how we can make that safe for them. The other thing I wanted to say was talking about having crossings at street level. Obviously, you can't do that with huge roads and, very high speeds and very, very wide roads and main arterial roads, but where at all possible, it is better to have a crossing at street level, at grade, than an overhead bridge. Kids won't use them. they will do something else. They will cross underneath. They will do, they're not going to walk 20 metres up the road, up 50 steps each side, down 50 steps the other side. It's just not going to happen. And therefore, we need to think about how, obviously there are times when it has to, and then you need to think about fencing and how you make that work. But as much as possible, it's about working with them. I mean, it also fits in with what we were saying last week about accessible roads. They're not accessible for parents with buggies. They're not accessible for children with disabilities who also need to get to school. So just thinking about how, wherever possible, you can keep crossings at road level and working with where the kids want to cross. So just want to say a quick bit about school crossings, which aren't that familiar, I don't think, across the CAREC region. I know some countries use them more than others, but these are where you have additional methods of raising drivers' awareness that they're going through a school zone during the sort of key morning and afternoon periods when the kids are around. So there's a photo here where they've got flashing lights which will go on during school hours to alert the drivers. I know that there are systems, Dave can probably say more about this, in Australia and New Zealand, where they have flags which come down to alert drivers that they're entering a school zone and that it is a crucial time of day and they should be slowing down. And then there are other systems in other countries where they actually have individuals supporting children crossing the road. So I know in Mongolia they have a system of parent volunteers who do road crossing patrols every day to make sure the kids get across safely. Or in Tajikistan, they work with young road inspectors where older children are trained to support the younger children on road safety issues, including getting across the road safely at key points in the day. So that's just something you might want to think about. It's not always in the gift of an engineer, but it's one of those, it's an extra tool which can be used to make sure school zones are safe. So just a few words on footpaths. I wasn't quite sure of the terminology, so footpaths, sidewalks, pavements, depending on where we are. Absolutely vital infrastructure to keep pedestrians safe. It almost feels too obvious to say that there must be a really safe footpath for pedestrians, to keep them separated, to keep children separated from the traffic, especially on the key routes to school. Though I have to say, when I went to look for a photograph to illustrate this slide, I realised how many terrible examples there are and how few schools get it right. And even think about it, neither of the schools that my children attend in the UK get it right. So it's a big issue, and you must, It's absolutely vital when looking at schools, roads around schools, that there are good footpaths in place that keep the children fully separated, that they're wide enough. Kids are going to come out in groups, they're going to be talking to their friends, they're going to be messing about, they're pleased to be out of school, they're not thinking about these things. It needs to be designed in a way that they don't have to think about it. There's plenty of room for them, and they can travel easily without coming into conflict with the traffic, without spilling out onto the roads. It's also worth saying kids go to school all year round, so the footpath need to be suitable when it's raining, need to be suitable when it's snowing, they need to have good drainage, they need to remain safe and not slippy and well maintained and suitable for people who may not have excellent mobility. They should also be clutter free and as much as possible free from obstructions to ensure that there's good visibility for drivers and they can see if children are going to cross or where children might be about to make some rash decision. I want to say a little bit on signs and visibility. This is an issue which we find a lot in the East region, that schools aren't marked. You drive past school and you wouldn't know it was there unless you were paying attention. There should always be really clear signage that you're entering a school zone, that a school is there, that you should be aware of children. Ideally, there should be a lower speed limit, as we said, so it should be warning you the speed is slowing. There should be good high visibility signage, and again, signage which is easy to see in the rain, in the snow, that works all year round. Additional markings ideally on the road, so treatments on the road which either change the road surface or painted signs warning you that the children are like to be crossing, as an extra warning to make it really clear for drivers. Drivers shouldn't have to work out that there's a school there. It should be really obvious. And again, very good visibility. Make sure the signs can be seen. Don't put them behind a tree, which seems to be a favourite, or put them right on the crossing, so that you don't see them until you're there. Make it really easy and really simple for drivers to know that there is a school there. I want to say a few words about parking. Obviously, this goes back to the observations at the beginning of how children are arriving at a particular school. If they're all coming by bus, then this isn't such an issue, if they're all walking, but there are definitely schools we work with in the East region where parking is a massive issue. And no matter how well you design your road and you try and make your sight lines good and your visibility good, parents will park wherever they want. So our partners always saying to us, if the parents could drive into the classroom, they would. They drive to the most convenient spot and stop. And they stop 2 or 3 deep, they stop wherever they want, they don't care if it's a zebra crossing. So you need to think about that. If it's a school where lots of kids are coming by private car, you need to think about how you manage that parking. And it's absolutely vital that it's taken away from crossings, that it doesn't impact on sight lines and visibilities. And it's also that it's safe, both for those being dropped off, so that kids aren't being dropped 3 deep, actually halfway in the middle of the road, but also it's safe for those who are already pedestrians or for drivers trying to get through. Often it is utter chaos, and you need to think about that. Unless you go and stand, you could look at the road during the day and it looks fine, but unless you actually go stand there and look at what's going on at the point at which kids are being dropped off, you can't get a feel for that. So that's one of the things you really need to take your head. And I can see Tolga has done work with us on this, looking at how to manage parking around school zones, and also thinking about if there is no real good solution of getting parking away from school entrances, whether you need to have some kind of drop-off zone, or some kind of kiss and ride zone where parents can drop quickly and kids can get out and then move on. But it's really important to think about how that's going to work. Just want to say a few words on public transport. Obviously, ideally, it would be great to encourage kids to be travelling to school on public transport. It removes private cars from the road and removes some of the issues shown in the previous slide and reduces the risk to pedestrians. It's also good for the climate. But we just need to think about how it works and whether it works for kids. And I know Phil said, moving bus stops can be problematic in terms of working with operators and public transport operators. But it's something to think about. It's something to think about, where are the bus stops around the school? Where are the kids getting off? How are they going to make the route from the bus stop to the school gate? And is it safe? And going back to that thing about, this will be the older children, this will be the teenagers, they will get off the bus, they will cross there. You know, regardless of what you do, they will do that. They will walk the shortest route to the school gate, and it will happen. So we need to think about how we make that safe. And is it safe? Is it clear? Is it accessible? Can drivers see? Is there good visibility around the bus stops? What happens when the child gets off? Can they be seen? Is it obvious to the drivers where the bus stops are and where the kids are going to come from? And also, is the area around the bus stop safe? You know, is there enough room for all the kids waiting for the bus, or are they going to spill onto the road? Is that going to be safe? So just how that works. A few words just on school entrances, and again, this is the thing I say, it is stunning the number of schools that are built so that when kids come out of the gate, they walk onto the road. I mean, it's just mad that nobody looks at it, but it really does need to be looked at. And just make sure, remember that particularly in the CAREC region, where you have large all through schools, you know, with kids from 5 to 18, there are going to be 1,000 kids coming out at the same time. You know, where are they going to go? And that is a really crucial question, because if you don't ask that question, they are just going to spill straight into the traffic. You need to make sure that there is a really wide area and there's somewhere safe for the kids to go, and that you have thought this through and you know where they're going to go and how that's going to be managed. And as I say, at the end of the day, the kids aren't going to be paying attention. They're pleased to be out. They're thinking about where they're going next. That needs to be managed. You need to just think about where they're going and how that is going to be made safe. Recapping on some of that, I think, as I say, one of the key issues, or the key issue, I would say, is speed. And wherever we can, we should be aiming for a 30km/h speed limit around schools, and ideally across the entire route to school. I mean, that is the safest for children. It is, you know, it is best for pedestrians. It makes cities nicer. It makes them more livable. It makes them a nicer environment to be in. And it doesn't cause as much congestion as people think. You know, it can be done without impacting traffic flows too significantly. So just thinking about that, thinking about traffic calming, recognising that simply a 30km/h sign won't be enough, and that in the vast majority of CAREC region countries, there will not be sufficient enforcement to make that work on its own. So thinking about how you can have traffic calming, which helps at reducing road widths, speed bumps, reducing speed, those issues really need to be thought about. High visibility signage, I'll just say again, no driver should be driving past a school without knowing that they're doing it. It should be really, really obvious that you're in a school zone, that there will be children around, that you need to be taking care and you need to be slowing down. Safe crossings, absolutely vital. And as Phil says, working with the pedestrians, crossings where they are going to cross, when at all possible. Accessible footpaths, again, you know, getting that right, making sure you know there's enough room for the kids to come out of school without interacting with the traffic. Parking, if necessary, should be restricted and should be organised in a way that makes sure it's not across crossings, it's not restricting visibility, and it's safe for those being dropped off. Bus stops, as I say, just thinking about where they're positioned, if you can move them, if there is a safe route from the bus stop to the school. And clear spaces around the entrance, and just generally good visibility, making sure kids can be seen. That is absolutely crucial. We know kids aren't going to be predictable. We know they're hard to see, and we know they're going to make rash decisions. And it's up to us as adults to create environments which are safe for them. And it's absolutely vital that we do that. That's a sort of rough, that's a slightly speedy overview, but I hope that touched on all the main bases and covered some of the points you're hoping for, Dave. We're very happy to take questions.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Emily, and thank you for the wide coverage and the energy that you bring to that topic from the really vast experience that East has. I particularly liked your mentioning the poor design in access around schools. It's so often the case that our schools, in terms of their location and design, there doesn't seem to be any urban planners or urban designers at the table trying to improve these features. But one thing I also note, particularly with your photos where you're looking at school zone programs, that school programs are a good environment in which to bring together the multiple stakeholders in road safety. That you'll get obviously the school and the parents and the children, but also the police and the road authority, at least at a municipal level, will generally be in attendance. So a great way to practice the multi-agency coordination that we know works so well in road safety.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I said, so my dog's going, I don't know if you can hear that. Someone's just rung the doorbell. Fortunately, I waited till I finished presenting. Yeah, no, absolutely. As I said, that absolutely, school zones are absolutely brilliant for pilot projects because there is a motivation. People want to help. People recognise that it's important. I mean, generally, people recognise that keeping kids safe is a good thing, and it's much easier to push for innovative plans and changes around schools than it is in other areas. And then you can make the case. Once you've done it around a school, you can say, look, it works, and then you can make the case to spread it wider. And that's certainly in the countries we're working with, we're certainly looking at, you know, getting 30 km/h speed limits around schools, and then they will push for a wider implementation of that in other urban areas. But it's certainly, yeah, it's an excellent place for bringing people together and having goodwill on your side and really people wanting to help with road safety. Absolutely,
that's good. Emily, thank you very much. That's excellent coverage. We will move on. There may be questions for you again later on.
Thank you.
So we now turn to Phil Jordan to learn about pedestrian safety in rural areas. Now, whether it's fast-moving traffic or poor lighting or lumbering heavy goods vehicles, rural environments really present specific road safety challenges for pedestrians. Phil's going to talk to us in some detail about these locations, pointing out some of the hazards and some of the responses to them. Phil.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Emily, for a great presentation. And it's good to see we've got so much in common with everyone trying to help pedestrians, sometimes with things that aren't always quite as straightforward as what the textbooks might make them to be. We have to work with the pedestrians and not try to force them into the mould that they aren't naturally going to go. This session, and I'll be as brief as I can be, is all about helping pedestrians in rural areas, because one of the things I noticed first in CAREC is that there are so many pedestrians moving around in the rural parts of the CAREC network. And when I thought about this topic, I thought they walk along the road to get to bus stops, etc. They cross the road when they get off the bus and they need to walk home. They cross the road in villages where the highway passes through the villages. The bus stops themselves are sometimes in need of some safety enhancements. And I'm going to talk to you about what I would love to see happen where highways pass through your villages. I'm also going to try to cover, in a nutshell, the key messages out of this entire workshop. And if we can encourage you, as I've said, I think in all of my sessions, to encourage you to remember pedestrians in your daily work. You are busy people, you are technical people, you are responsible for the road infrastructure. I urge you to remember the customers, the road users, of which the pedestrians are the biggest group of all of them. Now, there are some important themes. Use the safe system. All road users have a role in safety. Change not only your thinking, but the thinking of your highway authority, your police department, your agency. Try to facilitate pedestrian movements wherever possible, rather than block them. but I do accept it's a matter of real skill and judgment, knowing which is which. Please do not blame the pedestrians for all of their crashes. They might be responsible for some of them, but not for others. Remember, a pedestrian might be doing the exact correct thing, crossing a road, maybe on a zebra crossing, and can be struck and badly injured or killed by a drunk driver, a speeding motorist, or whatever. We have to manage speeds. There's been a fair bit said about that, but we could talk about that at much greater length. It's a difficult topic. And I'm going to touch on traffic calming in the villages towards the end of this presentation. Speed management, as I've said, is vital. I'm an engineer. I know that most of you work in road authorities, which are not rich road authorities. You'll never have enough money to do every job you want to do as well as you want to do. So what I'm going to try to give you are practical, low-cost options which will still help the pedestrian. You don't have to go and change the world with big high expenditure items. You can do a lot in the CAREC road network with small-scale civil works and with maintaining the crossings you have by making sure no zebra crossings are on wide and or high-speed roads. And as Emily just said, please don't go and spend $100,000 building footbridges to solve a pedestrian problem when most of your customers will not want to use them. So I'm encouraging you to do a lot and to do it low cost. Keep doing it consistently. You will help your customers. And be aware, whenever you go to build a new highway, or particularly to widen them, and they go through villages, you will have tragedies unless you take positive steps at the planning stage. So pedestrians walk across roads and they walk along roads. And as they walk along the CAREC roads, they are dealing with high speeds, generally. You are in rural areas. So you need lateral separation. The question is there a usable footpath? Hopefully yes, but generally not. Is there a wide paved shoulder as a substitute? Hopefully yes. When we look at the rural roads of CAREC, you can have snow-covered, big, wide open roads in Kazakhstan. You can have incredibly busy and high-speed arterials passing through Tajikistan. You can have school kids walking home in a dusty road with traffic, I think it's the A380 in Uzbekistan, and people waiting for a bus or to be picked up by mum and dad or someone on a busy road. It's a CAREC highway just outside Bishkek. And at the end of the Dushanbe-Kurgan-Tepe stage 1, the road that you audited last week, pedestrians walk along the road. So I'm a big supporter of paved shoulders. They protect the road. They give drivers a chance to take evasive action if there is a head-on collision bearing down on them. Gives them a chance to recover if they are dozing off and drifting off the road, which we hope they never do, but of course does happen. It gives the pedestrians and cyclists an all-weather path, just a little bit away from the vehicles. And it gives agricultural machinery a little bit of space. It also helps with dust suppression. And if you have two-wheelers, as some of the CAREC countries do, if you have motorcyclists, it helps to reduce the risk of them dropping off the pavement. Then you start to see how people, our customers, the pedestrians, use these paved areas. And kids in Indonesia love these ones. And their colleagues in a different part of Indonesia love this particular paved shoulder. People in Tajikistan on a wide CAREC highway with a beautifully paved shoulder can put it to use for their donkey-drawn cart. This lady is making use, I think, of the shoulder, but we don't know where the shoulder is here, whether she's on a paved shoulder or actually a part of the road. And this gives me an opportunity to flag with you the fact that having good line marking is a small part of good road safety engineering. It helps the drivers to stay on the road, the pedestrians to know where their shoulder is. It gives them, this tactile edge line, gives them a sound warning when someone is drifting a little too close to them. In a perfect world, even in rural areas, we would have a separate footway for the bikes and the pedestrians, 5, 10, 15, 20 metres away from the road, through the forests, under the trees, beautiful shady, all-weather footpaths. If you can't do it on both sides, try to do it on one side of the road. And these footways, again, in a perfect world, they would be all weather, as Emily said. It snows in your part of the world, it rains, it's dusty, and ideally you would have some street lighting. Something like that, which is on the fringes of a small village in Tajikistan, where the pedestrians, the children, can ride and walk to school. But when they're crossing roads, we have the issue of, should we give a crossing or not? Is it safer to give them a crossing, or is it safer at times to let the pedestrian pick their own gaps? The thing about rural roads, you have generally high traffic speeds. You may or may not have high traffic volumes. More often than not, the volumes are generally low to medium. Crossings will take place at many spots. Pedestrians will cross at many points in a village or out on the road network. These rural roads might be divided. Some of them are undivided. In fact, many are undivided. So again, one size doesn't fit all. To try and curtail the speed, you're unlikely to be able to use road humps in rural areas. We don't want to surprise the drivers, particularly at night. Even with the best of signage and line marking, the nighttime issue is a real risk. Do we rely on speed restriction signs and police enforcement? Maybe, but even so, in many parts of the rural parts of CAREC highways, we end up with speeds that are still 80 to 100 kilometres per hour, which is totally incompatible with the health and well-being of the pedestrians who are trying to cross. So we could put in a time separation device, pedestrian operated signal or a zebra crossing, but is that really safe? And I'm going to suggest to you it is not. And therefore, we have to think, what are our options? This mother and a couple of children are crossing the airport road outside Bishkek, speeds of 100 kilometres per hour. She can get across okay in all the big gaps that come along, subject to her having good adult judgment. The kids shouldn't be there on their own, but that's why she is there. Getting over the barrier is their particular problem at this point. In this example, there is a gap in the barrier. These people are crossing a similar sort of a road on another CAREC highway to get from their village up to the left across to wait here for a minibus to take them into the capital. And if you look closely, you will see a sign which is a regulatory pedestrian crossing sign, and underneath it you will see an information sign for a subway. So if we go a little bit closer, not to this one, but to another subway, there's the lady and her daughter crossing the road. There is a gap in the barrier. Gaps in barriers are not necessarily safe by any means. If a vehicle runs into the gap, they will spear themselves on the W-beam barrier. But when we're trading off one bad thing against another, we have to perhaps sometimes go for the one that's the most vulnerable, and that's the pedestrian. And on this same road here, this sign, as you will all know, is indicative of an underpass. Pedestrians go down steps, and here are the steps, to go underneath the road. Sadly, when you get down there, you find an underpass which even the cattle and the sheep would struggle to get through. And I'm only showing that example just to say, whatever facility we provide has to be well maintained. And for a start, we don't need underpasses or footbridges generally on our national highways. There are exceptions, but generally that should not be the starting point. So mothers and children waiting for taxis, waiting for mashtukas and minibuses, what can we do to help them? For a start, we should try to make sure there is a paved stopping area off the road, not just a ½ metre of paved shoulder, at least a 1.5 metre paved shoulder plus an indented parking area where the customers want to get on and off these minibuses. Negotiating that's not always easy. It's not always easy, but this is where the Highway Authority and the bus operators need to have constant and good and well-intentioned discussions. And as I've intimated, I think in every one of my presentations in the past 2 weeks, your job as engineers is to genuinely help the pedestrian. It's one of many jobs you have, but it's an important one. Ask yourself, am I helping the pedestrians by putting a zebra crossing and some signs? I'm not sure if there's even enough signs here. Ask yourself, why do we put in a zebra crossing? A zebra crossing is in the road rules to give the pedestrian their own priority over traffic, their own right of way, their own time to cross, which requires drivers to slow down and give way to the pedestrians on these crossings. Now, we all know that when the traffic is coming through on any CAREC highway at 100, 110 kilometres an hour, drivers will not stop. They will not stop if there is a multi-lane carriageway where they may not see there is a pedestrian masked by a slowing vehicle in front. And that's why I've been saying to you that please do not put new zebra crossings on high-speed roads and or on any road which has got more than one lane in each direction. If you have crossings, zebra crossings in those locations, think of either removing them and replacing them with what? With warning signs, maybe 1 or 2 street lights, and maybe the things that are going to come up here in the next couple of moments. So, moving on. Many of the crossings you have in rural areas are connected to bus stops. I hope you agree with me there. Feel free to put a comment in the chat box if you've got other problems in rural areas other than what I cover. Some of these bus stops are on divided highways, some undivided. How can you, as engineers, make them safer? That's our challenge. I'd say a couple of fundamentals. This is put in upside down back to the front, so don't try to read the numbers. But this situation is undesirable. With this particular design, the bus, when the bus is this red rectangle, when the bus pulls in, it can obscure sight lines to and from any pedestrian on this side who is wanting to cross the road. So a young pedestrian jumps off the bus and rushes to the zebra crossing and starts to walk across briskly. A driver coming along at 100 kilometres an hour has no hope of stopping in time. 100 kilometres an hour is 28 metres per second, if you wish to keep that in your mind. It's very high speed. So what is better? For a start, don't put zebras across multi-lane roads and never in high-speed areas. And at your planning stage, if you've got low speed and if you've got a few other things, I'm sorry, this was the only diagram I could find, don't put zebras across multi-lane or high speed, but definitely do put the bus stop downstream from a crossing point. And in fact, in this particular situation, I would suggest pave the median at that point, put some drop curbs in, put some warning signs back here, and let the pedestrians pick their own safe gap. In other words, low-cost civil works will be just as effective and, in my opinion, safer and certainly less, less cost and maintenance overall, and better help for the pedestrian. So this is a real photograph from a real CAREC highway. If Phil Jordan says that this zebra crossing is unacceptable because it's got 2 lanes and it's in a high-speed section of road where traffic is commonly doing 100, we've got a bus stop, we've got the zebra crossing is behind the bus, so that's something, that's positive. What should we do? What should we do? And I'd suggest you go through a checklist and ask yourself, what would you do if you were getting off that bus and had to go to your home on the other side of the road? Most bus passengers have to cross a road once a day, either in the morning to get on the bus or in the evening to get off it and go home. Ask yourself, will the zebra give you help? Do the drivers of your country slow down and give way at zebra crossings? I doubt it from my observations. If you want to help the pedestrians to select a gap, how will you do it? Will you give them time separation, i.e. zebra crossing, push button signals, puff and crossing? Or will you give them spatial separation? And in this photograph, you already have a median, narrow, but it's a median, and that's good. Would you put up warning signs? Very desirable wherever you have pedestrians. And just keep asking yourself, the device that you put in, would you allow your family to cross on that device? Because if you wouldn't, then you need to rethink. Now I'm going to jump a little bit here, and I'm going to throw up the question of how can we reduce speeds? And this is a very tough act. We can reduce them in a village if we are prepared to use traffic calming. Sadly, not enough traffic calming is yet used in CAREC villages, on CAREC highways. Can we control speeds out in the rural areas? Will we put up enough signs? And I'd like to see pairs of signs. In CAREC, we tend to have just one speed restriction sign. I'd like to see 2 facing every driver. And I'd like to see more police enforcement, but that's for others to decide. Our job is to look to see how we can manage the speeds. And I just want to, oh no. Dave, can you see that? Are we still watching?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. Has this one gone on to the next one? I've lost my screen here.
Oh, have you? So this is now the photograph with the median with the black and yellow painting down the side.
Okay, I'll go back.
And
That
this
one
is the
2017.
Exactly.
I don't have far to go. I don't know why the computer does this. My apologies. This is an example of a CAREC highway in 2017. It had the opportunity, after being road safety audited, etc., and there were proposals to duplicate. It could have been traffic calmed. But when we moved to 2021, that road has been constructed. You can see in the corner, rather the foreground of this photograph, there is a little piece of steel sticking out. That's part of a pedestrian footbridge. And a footbridge has been built up and over this highway, despite the best advice of road safety engineers. And you can see the pedestrians are voting with their feet to walk to the median to cross that road. That's a sign of, if you like, reality. And the pedestrian footbridge, unless I'm vastly mistaken, unless there are changes in the last 6 months, that pedestrian footbridge will be a big white elephant, as we say. It will be a waste of money. And instead, the pedestrians will be still crossing a high-speed road and without warning signs, etc., without road humps to slow the traffic. That should be a lady standing on the side of a road in Uzbekistan. Am I right, Dave?
Yes, it is.
So if we have a high-speed rural road and we're trying to help pedestrians to cross, there is too much of a temptation to go for footbridges, not enough to go for basic warning signs and a number of other iterations which sometimes call into play some electronic forms of enforcement. Let's look here in Georgia. We've got an expressway. Where you have expressways, they are expressly for the use of motor traffic. And it is correct to take pedestrians up and over or under, no question. When you don't have an expressway, and this is Pakistan, I think it's National Road 5, pedestrian overpasses can become, again, white elephants. The median is wide, the pedestrians break their path through, there are enough gaps in the traffic for pedestrians to happily wander across. So it's this combination of judgment between speeds and volume. Is that the new road, Dave, showing?
Sorry, Phil. Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Sorry to put it on you. I've only got about 6 or 8 slides to go. I was hoping I'd get through. Here is the new road that goes through that village I showed just a moment ago. It's a high-speed road. It's serving a very important national purpose. The buses and mini buses and taxis stop along this road. Providing time separation on here would not be appropriate. Providing a footbridge on here is a waste of everybody's efforts. But I would certainly provide gaps in the median, and I would pave the median if you have to encourage pedestrians to certain crossing points close to the bus stops. I would make sure there are footpaths off the road as best as possible. And I would not consider putting in time separation. Moving on to villages, we need a change of attitude. We need to provide a safer environment with more controlled speeds. And this is where traffic calming comes into it. Here is a sad story. This highway was widened, duplicated, and despite some warnings, speeds went up. The children still had to get to school. There was no facility put in at that time, no signalised facility, but there was a zebra crossing. The police spoke to me on one of my visits to this CAREC country and said, we are very concerned about safety on the new road. Already in 6 months, we have had 8 fatalities, 6 of them pedestrians, 3 of them children, 3 of them at this point. They had reacted quickly by putting in signals, replacing the zebra. Too late to bring back the children. And the signals, when you have uncontrolled high speeds through a village, will still not be a safe option. Here is, we go back to this village again. What are we going to do to manage speeds if we could have done this beforehand? We need to put in gateway treatments. We need to settle on speed limits of 40 kilometres per hour maximum. We need to work with the police for enforcement. And if the police cannot, because of resources, do enough enforcement, you have to seriously think about traffic calming with road humps, roundabouts, raised junctions, etc. Now, it's easy for me to say that, but I do admit there are difficulties. But I do say no villager should pay the price for the mobility of others passing through their village at high speed in a motor car. And the options you have can be quite low cost. They can be, and I hope you're looking at two big signs, gateway signs.
Yes.
Something like that when you come into a village, coupled with road humps. Something like that, which is an example of one of our country towns coming in from a 100k zone to a 60k zone, allied with some very interesting and novel pavement markings. And the challenge I have for those of you in Pakistan, this is, I believe, a national highway. Who would install, who'd be brave enough to take the first step to install road humps, or indeed hump crossings, and we've spoken about them earlier, on this highway? Many CAREC road authorities refuse to put in road humps on national highways. It's time to start to work to unravel that type of policy. And unless the road authority is prepared to bypass the villages and the marketplaces and the towns, and is prepared to spend much more money upgrading the roads around these villages, then it needs to accept that not always can they facilitate the motor vehicle. Important takeaway messages. I'll finish up. Your job is important. Engineers are important for road safety. The road has to be injected back into road safety. It's very important. There is a need to manage speeds, and that's been stressed by many of the speakers. Work with police. The police and engineers working together achieve a heck of a lot more than acting on their own. I've said before, don't place zebra crossings where they will not be complied with. Don't expect footbridges to be welcomed with open arms by your customers. Have all of your new road projects road safety audited. That's manual 1 of the CAREC series. Encourage small-scale civil works. They're not high-tech, they're low cost, they are incredibly low maintenance, and they are brilliant. Treat road safety as a business. It's important to invest government money wisely. You can save lives of pedestrians and of many others if you design and build and manage safer roads. Think of your customers, put yourself into their shoes. The world needs more road safety engineers. You can be well on the way to becoming one of those champions of road safety into the future. And I wish you well in your careers. And I'll finish by thanking our interpreters and saying that it's been a pleasure to be with you in this workshop for now 5 modules. Good luck and best wishes. Take care.
Phil, thank you very much. Terrific coverage. I'm not going to let you go just yet, but before we pass on to Tolga, could you please address 2 quick questions for us?
Sure.
If an engineer is faced with a decision about dealing with the risk to pedestrians of crossing a road versus travelling along a road, where should the engineer start? And secondly, before you answer, my second question, so I'll give you them both, they're both from Laurent, by the way, is can you please just clarify the staggered zebra crossing at a bus stop for us? Should it be in front or behind of the bus stop? The staggering included in that or vice versa, and why?
Okay, I'll answer the second one first because it's the easier one. In every case, Laurent, the pedestrians should cross behind the bus. Whether in your country they drive on the left side of the road or the right side of the road, it doesn't matter. The crossing point, I'm using that word carefully, should be behind the bus. Then it depends on whether there is a median or not, and how wide the median is, and whether it's a paved median, but you create an area that encourages pedestrians, if you have a median, to stand there and they can pick a gap in the second carriageway. Feel free to email me if you have any other questions on that one, Laurent. The first question, I've never actually encountered a competition between crossing and walking along. I'm trying to imagine, but if you have a location where pedestrians are at risk if they stay on the road, but their safer crossing point is further up the road, if that's what we're talking about, we need to generate magically somehow an off-road footpath and take the pedestrians as far away from the road as practical and take them to the preferred crossing point, assuming that sight lines or parking or some other visual obstructions are really too hazardous at the first point. I'm not answering that particularly well. I need more information, Laurent, but back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Phil. No, that was good. I think it does need more information. Phil, listen, thank you from myself to you for this series and on behalf of everybody. I'll leave it to Jamie Leather in his closing comments to further thank you. But in the meantime, let's move on. Thank you, Phil. Of course, the bulk of pedestrian casualties actually occur in our urban areas. And to address many challenges this presents, we'll now hear from Tolga Imamoglu from the World Resources Institute. Tolga has been with the World Resources Institute in Turkey since 2013, where he is responsible for the management of all aspects of a really wide range of transport and road safety related projects. His experience is equally large, encompassing a very significant number of countries and settings. Tolga has advisory roles with TRB and IRF and is the head trainer with UITP. He's also worked closely with the Ministry of Development, aiming to develop Turkey's road safety strategy. So welcome to you, Tolga. It's terrific to have you with us.
Thank you, Dale. So first of all, I would like to say good evening, or the good afternoon for our the participant, and I would like to thank you, ABD, to having me for this training. So also the Phil, thank you, Emily, thank you. I mean, your presentation, I mean, they were fantastic. I mean, so before heading my presentation, so today I'm going to talk about how we can the assist the pedestrian urban area. Well, I must say it's a the huge topic, right? It's a massive topic. It's hard to dealing in a half hour, the limited time period. But I gonna try my best. Okay. So I think I should be rush. Okay, let me check. Okay, so I think we are at the point where how we design across the world can mean a great deal in saving life for now and the future. And I'm sure that many of you, I think now you are familiar to this, the statistics. People in living city will be represent 70% of the world population by 2030. The number of the car on the road is already above 1 billion and expected to be 2.5 billion by 2015 for sure. it's a provision before, you know, the pandemic, you know, the situation, and nearly the half of, you know, the traffic fatalities have been shown occurring in city, and we have 1.2 million annual road deaths. So, well, I can say that our street just not are designed to care, you know, our children, the disabled people. I mean, they are not just designed for the, you know, the vulnerable, you know, the road user. So this is again another picture from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. I took this picture while I'm, you know, I have been, you know, carry out the road safety, you know, the inspection, and lady girl, I mean, she just grabbed you know, the piece of, you know, the bread here. So I think I must raise that question, right? I mean, this is very important question from my side. So question is, who is the traffic safety about? So okay, here we are. So this is for me, I mean, this is more than, you know, the global health issues. It's a one that is impacting our future and our children, our quality of life and equity. So the road crashes are leading cause of that among the people ages the 15 and 29, and second leading cause of that among the, you know, the children between the 5 and 14. So I think it's not acceptable. Again, the second leading cause of that among the, you know, the children between the 5 and 14. Pedestrian and cyclists can make up half of this, you know, the deaths, and, you know, the elderly accounting for nearly half of pedestrian fatalities. Okay, here we are. I think this kind of training, the expert, you know, the like to, you know, the pick a, you know, the toolsy in order to compare the, you know, the road safety, you know, the situation. They used to use the, you know, the pick one, you know, the steel from developing country, and other steel will be, you know, the from developed country. Here we are. We have another, you know, the example, I mean, which is going to show the development path for, you know, the traffic safety among the developed city with, you know, the better data. However, we can see what kind of the impact planning only for cars will have. For example, Atlanta from United States, car dependent, poor condition for pedestrian and cyclists, and it's a disconnected, you know, the city is not accessible and compact city, and Atlanta has nearly, as you see in this, you know, the slide, has nearly 10 fatalities per 100,000 residents, while Tokyo, I mean, a compact, connected, and, you know, the walkable city has just above 1. This is a, you know, the kind of, you know, the pretty, you know, the struck, you know, the contrast. So we should look into the, you know, the just how city as they develop now. So I think this is my first message for, you know, the CAREC city. I think that we have to you know, the pick our path. We would like to, you know, the create an environment like Atlanta did, or we have to, you know, the create our, you know, the urban environment as a, you know, the accessible, safe and connected city, while in here Tokyo. This is very, you know, the key question. Like I said, we must pick our path. Okay, so we must know in designing for pedestrian. This is my, you know, the first, you know, the message. I think we all know that even this early this morning, you know, while Philip was, you know, reflecting, you know, your homework, he, you know, drop off this, you know, the graph. I mean, so we all know that the speed has a, you know, the massive impact on road safety. I think you all know familiar this graph that show the risk of pedestrian that increase relatively speed. So we have to manage the speed, right? This is the first thing. And the second thing, the second message from my side, the pedestrian and passengers are like a water. So how? This is the, the another, the pictures from my hometown, Istanbul, Turkey. This is a, the interchange hub from, the Istanbul, where we have different, the type of, the public transit, the metro line, the public buses, the BRT, as well as in here, you can see the, the informal transit. And while we have been, identified the black spot, it's still level. We find that that spot where we have, the 3 pedestrian, the injuries hit by, the buses, or, the mini buses, the daily. So I think the issues, by the way, I took these pictures out of the, the rush hour. So in rush hour, can you, I think, as you imagine, it's very, the chaotic area, because in Istanbul, our metro lines carries 3 million, the passenger per day. The BRT carries 1 million passenger per day. We have here, like you see, the public, the buses, and informal, the transit. This is, I mean, well, very straightforward. It's a jungle, right? I mean, the bus driver, I'm talking about the, the formal, the public transit driver. They are, the driving this, the articulate buses with, the 18 meters long. So they cannot able to see. I mean, because the pedestrian, in the spot, they are acting and they are walking, the like a water. They are just, the trying to, the get into the the bus or the minibuses to be in their, the workplace on the time, or in the evening rush hour, they just like to, be at home on the time to spend your family, and they are acting like a, the water. So this is very important. So this is my message. If you are working, the in road safety area, particularly, the pedestrian, the safety, you must know that the pedestrian and passengers are like a water. So like I said, in here we have around the, the 3, the injuries per day. This is the black spot, and we drop of our, the recommendation for Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality. Okay. So the other, the example from my country, this is the Pedestrian Bridge. So my question is here: does water flow upward? No. In here we have, the Pedestrian Bridge. In previous, the session, the Phil actually, the cover, the Pedestrian Bridge, and here we are. This is from, the Konya, Turkey. You can see, I mean, this looks like a, the well designed and organized, the road section, right? The scheme. So we have in here, for example, 2.5 meters, the width, the cycling track. We have, the quite sufficient, the sidewalk. And in here also we have, the 3, the mixed traffic lane per direction, and people are, the using, the 8th grade, the crossing instead of, the using the pedestrian bridge, right? I mean, in here you can see, the red marking, so it says the slow down. But I think this very, the dangerous, the area. This is also identified as a, the black spot. So, well, my message is again the same. I mean, in urban area, while you are doing your stuff in road safety area, you must know that the passengers and the pedestrian are like a water. So again, my, the question is, does water flow upward? This is my message. This is why the people doesn't like to, to use the pedestrian bridge. So we have different, the type of, the design principle. The urban design is very keen. I mean, we should definitely find a way how we can articulate the urban design and, the road safety, traffic calming measurement, the arterial corridor. I mean, early this morning, we tried to cover that topic. David has raised this question. So I come up with the, the complete street approach. The cycling is another, and, the sustainable, the transportation, the mode. I know in CAREC, the countries is not a, the common, the urban mobility option, but we should also consider in future for sure. Safe pedestrian facility and access to public space, and safe access to mass transit corridor. Also, the mass transit itself, we can say that the mass transit is a, the countermeasure for road safety. So again, this is another, the example, and maybe another message. Well, I can say that this is the, the why we should, create a compact and connected urban design. Evidence from Latin America cities shows that the chance of, the vehicle collision and the pedestrian crash increases by 6% for every additional 1 meter of pedestrian crossing distance. So we must, find a way how we can, reduce the walking distance. So this is the evidence. So maybe, you track the, the news, but 1 year back, during in the middle of this, the pandemic crisis, the Paris mayor, the Hidalgo, she has show up and, the proposed, the 15 minutes, the city, right? I mean, for Paris and France. Actually, we dropped this idea before. And I mean, if we can, create a, the compact and connected urban design, we can improve our environment. We can, improve and establish safe environment for our cities. And having access to, the destination means less driving. And the meta-analysis on travel and the built environment found that the vehicle kilometers travel is most strong related to measure of the accessibility to destination, the meaning that the effort to increase the destination accessibility can decrease the vehicle travel and improve overall safety. So once again, this is another message from my side. We must create compact and connected urban environment. Okay. So here we are. I think we in previous, the session and module, we covered that my message is here. I mean, the speed bumps, traffic calm, different type of traffic calming measurement are cheap, practical way to slow down to safer level. And in here, I'm showing you speed bumps. Speed bumps can be designed for different speed design depending on their dimension. And here we see a speed bump in a school zone in Mexico City, and the impact is here. The speed bump reduced the vehicle speed from 37 kilometers per hour to 24 kilometers. Okay, here we are. Another, the intervention is a race crossing. I know it's not, the common, the intervention, but I just want to, the show you. But place in like, the Bogota, Colombia show that they're putting in several, the place, and one study has shown that a 10%, the reduction speed for car turning into the street, and as a priority really input on the pedestrian crossing, not the crossing vehicle. Okay, so I think we also covered the curb extension. Once again, we should definitely find a way how we can reduce the crossing distance. Once again, you know, the chance of a, you know, the vehicle collision and pedestrian crashes increase 6% for every additional 1 meter of pedestrian crossing distance. This is very, you know, the keen and clear. So also we have different type of, you know, the tool which are, I mean, can be divided into the, you know, the two category, the integration of, you know, the pedestrian and the segregation of pedestrian. And I think there's a, you know, the need of guidance on providing the, you know, the basic sidewalk space, but also in providing, you know, the totally pedestrianized street, the shared street, taking away the space for so-called street plaza, the school zone, and closing street to cars on weekend, like a car-free day, so on. Here we are. I mean, I think the last week the Emma McLaren from East, she did a great presentation, you know, about the, you know, the stakeholder engagement. Here we are. This is the, you know, the outcome of the survey that we carry out. I think we have to listen to our, you know, the citizens. So with the, you know, the field approach, our customers, right? In urban residences, I mean, we should look at the, you know, the certain, and not pleased with the, you know, the how things, you know, the currently stand. The survey that we have conducted show very poor satisfaction level with the condition of the sidewalk and the safety crossing street. So in here, I would like to encourage all of, you know, our participants to carry out the, you know, this type of survey in order to, you know, explore our customers' feedback, because we are working for them. So this is very clear. So here we are. This is the evidence from the states show that the pedestrian crashes are more than twice as likely to occur in the place without sidewalk. The street with, you know, the sidewalk on both sides have the fewest, you know, the crashes. So the project, like in this, you know, the Sao Paulo, to take away the, you know, the pedestrian space and the replace even, you know, the consistent the sidewalk can improve the safety and comfort. This is you know, the great need for this in many cities. I think so, especially even in my country, in my hometown Istanbul, in some, you know, the long road section, we don't have, you know, the sidewalk. People are walking on the carriageway. Okay, so we can also go through, you know, the pedestrianization of street. This is the, you know, the segregation tool. As you see in here, Izmir, Turkey, another, you know, the Turkish, you know, the city, and the research shows that the pedestrianized street can reduce crash by 80% or more in around the, you know, this zone. I mean, it's totally segregate from, you know, the motorized vehicle. But the tricky issues is here. The designer should pay special attention to ensure the crashes don't go up on the buffer area. So this is also very key. And the parklet and the street plaza, at least, you know, the city, you know, they belong to our, you know, the customer and our cities. So the road safety in Mumbai. Okay, so I have a couple of, you know, the example from, you know, the different countries and cities. I would like to start with the, you know, the India, Mumbai. Now we already know that the pedestrian from, you know, the majority when it comes to, you know, the total model share, and they are also the most vulnerable road user, right? But, you know, this is the, you know, the high share of percentage given that they take up, you know, the only fraction of the total road area. This is why it's extremely crucial for us to relook at how we design our junction in urban area, and that it what is the my message in here. So let's see the typical issues at the intersection. Okay, so here we are. The more junction are also mean more time for vehicles to cross the junction. Also, it's allows the vehicle to speed at the junction marking. It's unsafe. It's also increasing the crossing distance for pedestrian, because which they take the shortcut, exposing themselves to moving the traffic. I mean, this is the very large junction area. I think you can see in this picture. Okay, it's the first thing. So secondly, the wide slip lane and large turning radius. So wide slip lane allows for unauthorized vehicle movement, thus creating the conflict at junction with unauthorized the movement. Okay, so it's encourage parking, creating the obstruction for vehicles turning, the taking turn, or the block for pedestrian. Okay, and large turning reduce encourages speed of vehicle at the junction, making the junction unsafe. Okay, and the third one is inaccessible traffic island. At most place, traffic islands are beautified by the planters, the gardens, the statues, etc. And due to the which they are inaccessible for our pedestrian to cross the junction, the forcing them to walk on the carriageway exposed to a fast moving vehicle. It's also the reduce the effective width of carriageway at the some the place height of the island, also the obstructs the visibility. Okay, also the other the common issue with our the junction worn out, and or the absence of the markings, the absence of the markings such as the crosswalk, lane markings, stop line, etc. leave the user the distorted at the junction. It confuse the the user, the creating the chaos at this the junction. So well, the lack of the infrastructure for vulnerable road user, while our road and the intersection are designed for car, not for the people. There's a the lack of the infrastructure for vulnerable road, the road users, such as the pedestrian, the passengers, the people with disabilities, elderly, and the children. So this is our the case. So how we can reduce the crashes. Okay, so we have some also the additional the things that we must the take in account: your geometry, the payment condition, the signage and lane markings, the facilities, the weather, the lightning and visibility, and traffic calming measurement. So this is the case. So what we have done in the Mumbai, we corrected the geometry. We carry out the speed management for pedestrian safety, and also we carry out a tactical urbanism. Also, I had a the brief discussion with my colleague from Asian Developing Bank. Maybe the next the training session, maybe we can make a room in particular the tactical urbanism, like Phil the has highlighted. I mean, the road agency in, you know, the CAREC network. You can go for the, you know, the small scales, you know, the work. But even for the, you know, the small scales, you know, the work, it's hard to dealing with, you know, the agency. So maybe the tactical urbanism is a good tool. It's a good tool to start this, you know, the argumentation with the high level official. This is my, you know, the another message. Okay, here we are. I have, you know, a video for you about this, you know, the improvement. Okay, so as a road safety auditor, I mean, my entire career, I mean, I love my job, but you know, this is the training, so I think I should be, you know, the straightforward, and I must, you know, share my honest thought with you. I mean, this is the training, right? So I love my job, but you know, the challenging part, you know, it's dealing with the, you know, the high level, you know, the decision maker. I mean, so I think the you know the issues is here. We have to find a way how we can, you know, propose the, you know, how we can you know, the drop of our, you know, the recommendation, how we can show our, you know, the impact of, you know, our intervention that we recommend, right? So I think the tactical urbanism is good solution. As you know, the watch in this video, in a first place, by using, you know, the plastic bollards and the plastic, you know, the barriers, we try to, you know, narrow down this, you know, the large intersection area, and we did some, you know, the payment with the, you know, the children. It was kind of, you know, the good time for them. And then, I mean, the limited time, I mean, it's allow us to, you know, the collect the samples. I mean, and the outcome, you know, was great. I mean, we improved the you know, the traffic flow, as well as we improve the, you know, the pedestrian safety. Also, there's a, you know, the common concern from the, you know, the high level decision makers. So if you're gonna put this, you know, the intervention, the traffic will be slowed down, and, you know, we are going to collect some negative feedback from the drivers, because from my side, the drivers, they are the, you know, the voting for, you know, the local, you know, the government. So is another, you know, the discussion for sure. But at least in this case, you can see, you know, the win-win solution. We have to, you know, the improve the traffic management, as well as we improve the safety and accessibility. And this tactical urbanism give us the, you know, the samples, and then we convert this, you know, the tactical urbanism intervention in a permanent way, because it was, you know, the great you know, the argumentation tool. We showed our impact. So anyway, like I said, maybe next time we can cover. So this is the picture. Okay, so another, you know, the example here.
And Tolga,
Okay,
I must
these are
flag
the,
with
you
you,
know,
we are running out of time.
okay, sure. These are the, you know, the outcomes, the of, you know, the our, you know, the project average, you know, vehicle speed drop 50%, and the crossing distance will reduce around the 35%. High risk config per hour drop is 71%. So I'm going to share this presentation with ABD, and they gonna share with you, I think so. So here we are, another, you know, the example. I'm trying to be rush. Okay, I think I must skip that video. I think so. I don't know, do we have time or not? So I think I can skip. So another, you know, the case from, you know, the Ethiopia, at the Tera, you know, the station in African region. Only the Ethiopia, Addis Ababa has the, you know, the LRT light rail, you know, the system. So, well, once again, this is my message: mass transportation itself is a, you know, the road safety countermeasure. But in Addis context, we identify some, you know, the safety issues. So we carry out the road safety inspection along the, you know, the LRT corridor. And this is
I'm sorry,
like
Tolga,
yeah.
we are out of time. So maybe if you could make
Okay.
a closing comment, and I think just direct people to your presentation.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm dropping off now. So thank you, David. I mean, the two more, you know, the cases from my presentation, one from, you know, the Ghana, Accra, and one from Ethiopia, Addis. In case that you are going to have any, you know, the question related to, you know, the cases, please don't hesitate to reach out me. I think the ABD they will provide my the contact details. So I'm stopping now, sharing my screen.
Thank you, Tolga, and we certainly will. I'm sorry we didn't have time to go through all of that. Just to remind participants, there are 3 excellent examples, case studies in Tolga's presentation. Please have a look at those. Marianne has placed the link to all of today's presentations into the chat. so you have access to those. We won't have time for further comments or questions at this point. I'm sorry, we are already running 5 minutes over. I did want to emphasise, however, they were very impressive to see, Tolga, the amount of evaluation of treatments that you've been doing. That's very valuable, particularly to produce crash reduction factors for low and middle income country settings. Of course, the ultimate attraction here for many of our cities is simply to create great places to live, and that's certainly the result of some of your work. So terrific, thank you very much. I'm now going
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Mr. Jamie Leather to provide closing remarks for the Pedestrian Safety Workshop series. Jamie is the Chief of the Transport Sector Group here at the Asian Development Bank. He has over 30 years of experience in transport, working internationally with development organisations, governments, private sector and research institutions. And welcome, Jamie. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Dave. And I thank all the participants. It's great that you were able to join this session and the various components of it. I think you are perhaps the most important people, no offense to anyone else in the list of those I have to thank, but it's you who are out in the field, and it's you who can really make that difference. So thank you for all of the participants in this course. Of course, the resource persons and those that have been leading this, they have the expertise and the knowledge. And yes, we're running short of time. Time is always limited, but please do use us or the resource persons. If you want to come to ADB, we'd be more than happy to ensure that we can connect you with those excellent examples that have been shared throughout this training. We genuinely want to see a reduction in fatalities and serious injuries across our road. That is a prime goal of ADB, and it's only through these type of events where we can ensure that that process is being put into action and the knowledge and the expertise is being made available to all. So thank you to the participants, thank you to the resource persons, and of course thank you to all the organisers who have been able to make this event run seamlessly and smoothly. It's amazing how much work goes on behind the scenes, and often it's those that make it the learning experience really credible. If I may just very quickly stress that we about road safety in general and pedestrian safety in particular, we are, as it was said earlier, we are all pedestrians at some point of our journey, even whether on a motorbike or a car, but particularly if we do not have access to private modes of transport or we use public transport. I would also say it almost is in all different geographical locations. There was a lot of talk on urban, and that's clearly where the higher volumes of pedestrian and traffic interaction happens, but also in rural communities. And I particularly like the comment, should we look at crossing or going along the roads? That again is not just an urban issue. A lot of people in rural areas or indeed national highways use the roads as a means to get to school in the morning. They walk along the road, so we must look at this. And it's not just about providing the facility, it's about operation and management and upkeep of those facilities as well. There is far too much encroachment along the pedestrian facilities that have been provided, particularly along the sidewalks, which often means that those pedestrians are then forced to walk in the road because the facilities that were provided have been utilized by street sellers or hawkers or whatever it may be. So it's not just about getting the design right, it's about getting the operations and ensuring that they are maintained in terms of being able to be used for that. It does require a coordinated approach. We need national road safety strategies. We need action plans to deliver those, and therefore we can be able to start to save the lives. We should urge road authorities to prioritize safety, particularly for pedestrians. And in the urban context, we should urge city authorities to take pedestrian safety or road safety generally higher up the agenda. So we need to work with our counterparts in highways agencies. We need to work with our counterparts within city authorities to make sure we design streets better for all users, particularly pedestrians and the vulnerable road users, but also manage and maintain those streets so the pedestrians can use those facilities once they have been provided. Of course, capacity development and knowledge is very important, and that's why ADB is very keen to support knowledge events such as this. We want to make sure that best practices are known about, they're shared, examples in the real world are presented, so it's not just theoretical, it's a reality that lives can be saved and people can have a much more pleasant environment in terms of walking along our roads or across our roads. So just to share once again the full commitment that ADB has to support road safety, particularly vulnerable road users in the CAREC region. As I said at the beginning, please do contact us if you have any questions, any follow-up actions you would like to follow. The key is getting this delivered on the ground. That's when we start to see lives saved. Yes, the knowledge and events like this are great to start that process, but we want to support that process through to delivery, so we do see more lives saved. Thank you all very much for attending. Thanks to the organisers, thanks to the resource persons. I hope you got out of this these meetings what you and this workshops what you hoped to. Thank you so much. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you to our participants. Thank you to the organisers, and especially thank you to our excellent presenters.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, our experts, Jamie, Dave, and our participants.
Thank you all, and bye-bye.
Thank you.